That's great. I can see the number increasing, but we'll have to start. We've got only 1 hour. Thank you very much for everybody for joining this exciting webinar. I've got my honorable panelists also with me. We've got this fantastic topic, very timely. The law is now very new and now being seen more and more meat coming to the bone of the skeleton of the law, which was produced in 2019. So we've got panelists from different parts of the industry, but as far as the participant goes, we've got regulators here, we've got senior industry practitioners here, we've got lawmakers here, we've got cross-border participation also. So hopefully we should be able to interact and learn from each other a lot. So the idea of the whole thing is to learn from each other. I will give a little bit of a snapshot of what PDPL is all about. Why is data important? Give a little bit of introduction about us. Then we'll dive into to engage with you. We've got some polls configured, and then we will ask questions to our lovely panelists. And then the participants will be able to interact with the panelists also. I would strongly recommend if you can start writing your names down and introduce yourself in the chat box. Use the chat box as much possibly you can. There's a Q&A session. You can start posing the questions now or later in the process of the webinar. I think I would strongly recommend that you should start introducing yourself. For example, your name, your designation, your company you're representing, perhaps a LinkedIn profile link also, so we can know who else is participating. So without further ado, I'll just go and introduce myself. My name is athGADLANG, and I've been in this professional services space for the last 22 years. This is my privilege and honor to host this webinar with such fantastic panelists. We have my working experience has been majority of them with audit firms. I was part of Ernst & Young, I was part of Deloitte, I was part of BDO in different countries, and lately I've just joined my own firm called athGADLANG. A little bit of intro about us. We are an advisory firm working on assurance, accounting, tax consulting, the value propositions which we produce. There's a lot of work which we are doing on governance, risk and compliance. That's why we're presenting this webinar to you, and more we will do inshallah in future. That's the team, management team. Our team has got a variety of experience in different industries. We've got industry practitioners from aviation, from oil and gas, from financial services, different facets of life. Somebody told me the other day that you got a number of years of experience, you add up, that comes up to around 250 years of experience. Very fresh company, 7 years old only, but with very fresh perspective to the market and to the advisory field. We've got to around 4 countries so far, around 100 odd people since we started, 600 plus clients and serving these 3 industries. So enough of us. Now let's get into the panelists. I'm really excited. A lot of groundwork has gone into this to bring people on board, but very thankful to the panelists who have accepted to attend this webinar with us. We've got Manal Saraf. She's Director of Compliance at Batelco and has audit and risk experience with KPMG and Batelco. She's registered accounting expert with Ministry of Justice. So welcome you, Manal, and thanks for joining. We've got Mr. Ali Yusuf, which is Head of Compliance and MLRO at Salam Bank, a listed company, previous background with Central Bank. Knows this space really well, have done a lot of work in this space, so we should be able to learn a lot from him. And we've got another senior panelist with us. We've got Shabal. Shabal has got amazing track record in terms of his work experience. He's a lawyer and the finance expert by background. Gulf Hotel Group, a large listed company in Bahrain. He has taken the role of ensuring that PDPL and the other relevant compliance matters are taken care of in Gulf Hotel. We have ex-Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Assistant Under Secretary. He is not with us today because he had some really urgent stuff to do. He's actually traveling also. He would not be able to join us today. Hopefully, he's trying. I think I just spoke to him. He's just trying his best to attend, but he's trying to attend remotely, so might not be possible. But he is ready for any questions post event. If you have any questions, you can post it to us, and we can get the answers for you. So without further ado, let's jump into the topic. What do we have here? We have got such an important topic of data. Now, data, why everybody's talking about data all the time? Data has been at the center of everybody's attention. The amount of data created today is amazingly high, and the quantum is amazingly high. I was unable to even pronounce this term quintillion of 2.5 quintillion bytes per day. That's a huge amount of data. 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years only. So you can imagine the sensitivity of the data, and the data management goes up day by day. And it's becoming increasingly important that we should be focusing on how our data is used. You would not be surprised to know that the data is typically collected in various shapes and forms. So you will be going out for shopping, swiping your credit card, getting on a website, register yourself, being asked to provide your information. In fact, sometimes you don't have to provide information. You just cookies have been thrown at you, and you accept those cookies, and then there you go. You've got provided some parts of your personal information to them, knowingly, unknowingly. And lately in Bahrain, when you go out for cafes, they ask you to provide your CPR number and your telephone number and your name. That's your personal data, and you need to know how the data has been used. So usage of data is being questioned. A lot of data has been used for your benefit. So your behavioral data, your personal data mapped to you, so you will be able to see online specifically what you really want to buy, or you really interested in. But a lot of times the data is not used in an appropriate manner, where you need to understand how your data is being utilized, or sometimes packaged to sell to other parties for marketing purposes, for any other purposes. There's a lot of data theft, which we have been notified of, and we are all aware of it. So yesterday only, I was just finding myself somewhere on a Google map, and I saw my workplace was pinned on Google Map, and I was amazed that I've never provided that information to Google. How did they manage to find me, my workspace, and my home address? And I'm sure you must have had that realization when you're using different platforms, different apps online. So that's the gist of it. That's why data is important. And then you need to feel that you're control of the data, and for that purpose, you've got PDPL law which has been created, where now the data control has been giving back to what they call data subjects. So you and I, personal data you providers, are the subjects, and for the companies to abide by the law and how to manage that data. So the data protection law was crafted in 2019, effective from 2000, so crafted in 2018, effective from 2019, and it's live. The body which has been assigned to take care of the law's implementation is Ministry of Justice, and Ministry of Justice has done a fabulous job so far. There is a portal out there. You can see the law is being very crafted in Arabic and in English. So there's a lot of information, bite-sizable. You can just go and study and understand. It's very straightforward. At the same time, they're putting out consultation papers where you can contribute also, where they are giving more and more information about how to implement different parts of the law itself. The purpose is to protect the data for the individuals, and without your consent, the data should not be moved around. There is a non-compliance risk also for companies for who are not being able to manage the data they're supposed to manage as per the provision of this law. There's an imprisonment for 1 year, up to 1 year, and 20,000 dinar. And it is severe actually for organizations. So the implication for businesses who are joining today, a lot of things needs to be done. Maybe some organizations through GDRP, which has been introduced for years, and now have already started working on it. So I know the larger organizations have done a lot of work on it already, even before the PDPL was introduced. And some work has been done on financial services institutions also. but then implication on businesses are there and they need to be taken care of. And then hopefully from this webinar, we will learn more how these senior individuals have tackled this challenge in their own organizations. The authorities there, they do a lot of things. I've just listed out a couple of things, few things here, just for you, bringing things into perspective. That what we're talking about, the authorities mandate, authorities governance, authorities operation, modus operandi is recorded in the law itself. But then there's a concept of data protection guardians been introduced. There will be a lot of training and awareness, inshallah, will be coming out. The Ministry of Justice, they are the body to bring the monitor the PDPL compliance and then maintain an authorization of the register for the data processing, which needs to be done. A lot of such things have been said and written in the law. I'm just giving you some snapshot here. So the consent of the personal data provider has to be taken. Appointment of the data protection guardian, depending on the size and the nature and the sensitivity of the data individual companies and the firms are holding. Transferring of data for processing outside of Bahrain, it's not going to be straightforward now. You have got lists which are now proposed in the consultation paper, but then any other country outside of that list needs to get a permission on a case-by-case basis, depending on what their own readiness is in terms of the data protection. And then a lot of notifications required for the automatic data processing to the ministries, and the rights of the data subjects, like people like you and me, are back to us now. So we will be able to control the data usage. And the framework for the data quality is now being expanded on one of the consultation papers, what data controllers needs to establish. So that's just the high level overview before we get into polls. So I want to gauge the pulse of the market. We've got some polls. We want you to interact and tell us what have we done so far. So I'm going to run a poll, fastest finger first. You need to pick up the questions answer. So I'm going to just launch the poll, and then we'll just see what our market participants have done so far. So I'm going to allow the panelists to vote also. So I'm launching the poll. Please answer, and it will be very exciting to see what market participants have already been doing. So you've got questions there on your screen. If you can start answering. Great to see this feedback. I'll be showing the results in next 30 odd seconds. We've got half of you have voted. That's great. It's not surprising to see the results I'm seeing. So I want to just give more 10 more seconds before I close the poll. So please, if you can, there's a 65% voted. We've thrown 3 questions at you just to understand how the market has reacted to the law itself today. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. I'm just going to show the results. So can you see the poll results? Manal, can you see it? Okay, I need to maybe perhaps share the results. Now you can. So who's ultimately responsible in your organization? So 63% of the people say compliance function. Does your team fully understand the personal data protection? So 75% it says somewhat understand. And did you start implementing? So 50% have started the process, and there's 22% have not even started the poll. So that's a pretty amazing, as to how this the protection of the law has not been started. The whole process has not yet started. So I want to bring in the panelists now to start talking and share their views based on what we have sort of seen and heard so far. I'm going to stop it. The screen is gone in front of you. Sorry, guys. This my tech skills have been tested today. The screen is gone in front of you, Shabal.
No, not yet. I can see the screen.
You can see the screen. Okay.
Yes, some snippets.
The poll is not gone, is it? Okay.
Poll has gone.
Okay, has gone. Okay, great. Let's pick up with Manal. Manal, you've worked in large organizations. You've got a huge task, Patelco, large receiver of data from the market, and the overall management of this must be really hard, and it must be a challenge. So we would love to learn from you and understand how did you tackle this initiative in your own organization. We want to learn from you, understand how this whole process you've managed internally. So please, Manal, if you can just unmute yourself and talk, we would love to learn from you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on board. It's a pleasure to be here. It was a mammoth task, especially as you've mentioned that for companies such as Betelco and with complex processes and the way that we collect the data and from all the different data points. So when the law was first drafted in 2018 and then in 2019, it was a task on us to really understand the impact of it. So even though the data authority wasn't set up at that time, between myself, with the legal advisors that we have and some consultants that we have worked with closely, we were able to identify where the data points start, where do they end, what systems were affected, and then going and looking at the impact of and what changes need to be done. And data may not be only in a system, they could also be on paper. So we have to take that into consideration. And you would look into customer data, HR data, you look at all different sorts. So we have to look in all of those things. So after that, then just breaking it down, making it simpler, trying to understand what's the use of the data. Are we using it for legitimate processing? Are we using it for marketing? Are we going to be, selling that data? Or what do we have in our contracts for in terms of storage and retention? So we had to look within our company policies, procedures, and what changes that we had to make in order to be in compliance with the law as much as possible. Yeah.
And I wanted to also ask, Manal, to you, how long typically this process takes when you from the day you started, from day you started getting a rough idea as to where you stand. So typically, what's the timeline you would propose for an organization of your size, but for smaller organizations also to get up to the ladder?
Of course, Betelco, it is a big company, and it is very complex with different types of systems, so that it did take a while, and investment. Of course, it's not as easy, flicking a switch and making those changes, but you need to look at your own company and your own processes. Some company, a luxury boutique investment company, it could be very simple. You just make sure that the contract's in place, make sure that the systems are, and many of systems that you get off the shelves are GDPR compliant. So you can activate those and you're good to go. And you would just be mindful of your transfer of data, or if you have data on the cloud, or if you have data in a data center outside of Bahrain. You just need to be wary of that and try to keep the data as much as possible within Bahrain. Now, if you are a bigger organization and it is a matter of looking at interdisciplinary departments, and you would look at the complexity of that, it can take longer. It can take a good 6 months to do that. But then again, it all depends on the size of the company and the complexity of the processes.
So you recommend that this should be started now, if not yesterday.
Absolutely, absolutely. You need to start. You need to understand what is the journey of the data? Where does it start? Where does it end? Because especially if you're collecting customer data, the data subject can now come back and say, you need to anonymize my data. If they have stopped doing business with you, they're like, I want you to delete my data. And you have to prove to them that you have done it. Now, within your systems, are you capable of doing that?
Yeah, and I think previously perhaps the organization may have not even thought about that kind of requirement. They have to create a separate set of individuals, the function itself to deal with something of that sort.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, you can ask questions in a Q&A session also. I'll just open up the floor to the attendees to ask the questions directly. I'm just eager to ask few questions myself to the panelists. We've got Ali, if you can shed some light on. I think we all think that new law and new regulatory requirements are always a beast or always a monster, or always a bad one, but they do bring some good parts to the organization, some time to reflect on the processes. Do you think that the law, which was still not completely fully out yet, how did they motivate yourself to bring that into place? And also wants to understand, did that help you to improve the controls already in place in your organization? So Ali, if you can unmute yourself and talk, that would be great.
Thank you, Arshad, for the question. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Coming back to your question, of course, what motivated us in ASBB, and I think any compliance officer in Bahrain would also agree, that CBB expects compliance officers to be proactive instead of reactive. So when the rule came out, or when the law came out, a lot of the compliance officers were actually considering implementing it at that time. Furthermore, the law itself has a lot of aspects that overlap with the current regulations that we have as banks, and as well as other companies, I presume, such as taking banks as example, module BC, the rule or the module related to interactions with customers, module OM, the module related to cybersecurity, and so on, even given that cybersecurity is a hot topic these days in Bahrain. So a lot of the implementation of PDPL, or the data protection controls you need, are actually things that you need to achieve other regulations as well. So it was, let's say, a win-win situation for us that we implement this. We get controls in both PDPL, we get controls in other aspects. So it would be a good progress for the bank, and it would enhance our controls, not just for data protection, not just for this law, but other regulations that are active as well. Yeah.
Now that's great to understand. I think I don't know was echoing, but Ali, I think that's a myth you have sort of busted here, that people think that it's a law and new regulations is always a bad thing. But I think that's not as you said, and shedding the similar sort of light on the topic. Do you think that the people are already late? You think that there's a lot more to be done for your organization, or do you think that you're still at the right stage of the completion of data protection law implementation in your own organization?
See, I don't think anybody's late. There's always time. Since the regulation are on draft, still consultancy, let's say, phase, it's high time for organizations to start implementing at least the groundwork. For anything, any project, even building a simple house or a home or whatever, you need to have the foundation first. So implementing the correct foundation based on current regulations, as you are aware, the Bahrain PDPL law is based on the 1995 EU law, as well as some aspects from the 1998 UK Data Protection Act. So you can implement the groundwork, you can implement the let's say the foundation, you can have the policy ready, you can have the processes ready, you can have, let's say, a bulk of the systems ready, because as I stated before, it overlaps with your data, with your cybersecurity requirements. So you can have a bulk of those ready, bearing in mind to be a bit flexible when drafting such policy, just to incorporate the regulations as soon as they are released from draft format. So to answer your question in a very short format, I don't think it's late. I think it's the right time to start if you didn't.
Great, thank you very much. We've got Shabal here also, so I think we will just bring him into the picture. Shabal, you Gulf Hotel Group, massive group, different kind of businesses you do, and I'm sure this must have been a challenge because a huge task. So maybe just walk us through the challenges you faced. I'm just very interested in knowing what were the challenges and how did you overcome these challenges. Please, Shabal.
Yes, good morning, Arshad, everyone. Pleased to be here with you today. Actually, in any new implementation, whether it's for PDPL or something else, the culture is the most critical and the most difficult part, because you have to get people to do something that they didn't do before, despite the fact that there's a lot to do with systems in this case. But however, individuals and frontliners, they are supposed to understand how to grab the spirit of the PDPL. This is the first challenge. The second challenge is the spread. When a company is spread across countries and continents, PDPL becomes more critical because, for example, we have one operation in an African country, whereas the client base is concentrated from Europe. So your PDPL considerations there should extend to satisfy GDPR even, because this is the way they want to do business and they need to protect their own data when it comes to individuals and third parties. Now, as Manal mentioned about the journey of data from beginning till the end, and about readiness, the most important part, which we're glad to announce that you already started this part, is developing the system for the consent management, because it's impossible for any firm to manually manage database. It's impossible, not only difficult. So it's better that for each individual will address their database on their own. They will address their own data the way they want, what they want to receive, what they want to hear, when they want to click and opt out. I remember one instance 5 years ago in Bahrain when I contacted some telecom operators asking them about an SMS campaign at that time. And they said, okay, we have this million of numbers. It doesn't mean much to me. Do you have any layers? Do you have any categorization by gender, nationality, language? Are they resident of the country? They come from Saudi Arabia, so they open their line only when they come here. So and so, nothing at all. It was amazing, and that reminded me of the European and American early laws about unsolicited communication to individuals. So I asked that question, and I didn't have an answer. It's nice to see the law. The challenges remain managing the data, granting access to individuals who manage their own data, and any company that is dealing across the borders of Bahrain. Of course, it requires additional consideration. Those are the main challenges. Other than that, and the culture, of course, culture remains, people remains our main challenge. So that's where we will be working. So maybe technically the job will be done in 6 to 12 months, but it's a journey that will remain there. It's about training, awareness, updating, learning lessons, finding gaps, not only standing at the gap analysis that will be run at the first instance, but run a gap analysis should become a routine. Therefore, policies are not difficult to produce, but processes, SOPs, are the most important, and they cannot really be copied from one place to another. And I'm glad to announce that till now, I didn't know if there is, I don't know if there's another company who decided to do the job internally. We're doing it internally, believing that it has multiple layers of benefits. First of all, of course, Ashad, it's not about saving alone, but it's also saving a lot of money. But no one would know your house the way you do it, you know it. This is one. Two, with all respect to all firms, most of policies are copies and will be altered in here and there. But the most critical are SOPs, gap analysis. Our people will do it the best way. Besides one very important point, knowledge management of the PDPL. Because when a firm comes, they don't pass their knowledge. They give you a book, fill, take it. This is the guidance. This is the medicine. Go buy it and do it. No, we want to develop our own knowledge management, knowledge and the knowledge management at the same time. So we're focusing on knowledge management, culture, technology, of course, not at the end, but it's always there, the law. So I believe any data officer should have a good grasp on information technology and the law. And of course, proper understanding and consideration to culture. Everything after that will become much easier after you finish the big headache.
No, I think thank you very much. I think that as they say that if you have flu, if you treat it by yourself, it will finish in 7 days. Otherwise, if you go to doctor, it will take a week. So I think it's just the same thing, depending on whether you have the right kind of capacity built into in your organization or not. But you've raised a very good point here about culture. And I think that's the key, really. I think the processes, we are very good at it, writing things down, so putting all the policies, governance structure, setting it up. But then if people are not applying it, I think that will become useless. We got a lot of questions from our friends in participants. There's a huge raft of questions here. I'll just keep reading them out one by one. I've got some questions which are sitting in the comments box also. And then just allow you guys to pick up an answer. So the first one, I'm reading it out here. You got it from Akash Verma. He says is it mandatory to appoint data protection officer? Manal, do you want to take this one up?
Okay. According to the law, it's not mandatory. You'll need to have a data controller. And even with the consultation law, if you look at the measures to protect data, if you look at Article 7, the data controller may appoint a data protection officer. So far, it's not mandatory.
Great. I think that you've answered the question. Thank you very much. I think we did sorry, Shabal, you want to add something? Yeah.
Yes, I would add, Manal, there were a circulation like 1.5 months ago about the data officer. I think it was like a testing balloon from the authorities, because there were a draft that I received it from through an audit firm, one of the big four, and I will be sharing after once we finish. It's about identifying or specifying the qualifications of the data officer, because they want to avoid assigning just, with all due respect, just anyone, this is data officer. And when things get busted, they would say, oh, I didn't know, I don't know. So there should be specific qualifications and knowledge. Yes, you're right. As much as it is mandatory or not, there will be someone to blame, maybe a scapegoat or someone to manage the show,
Yeah.
and it should be one individual eventually.
Yeah, Shaba, I mean, right now it seems to be the data controller within the
Yes,
definition of the law that will be the primary responsible person.
yes, yes,
And
yes,
you're
Um,
right, they can't just blame anyone and they'll be the scapegoat. There are serious penalties within the law.
yes.
I think we sitting in the consulting firm, we do get a lot of people who are coming up with various different things. So I think I've seen the receptionist and the office boys become taking a significant roles just on paper. But Ali, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Manal and Shabal said. Of course, it's completely correct. But from the banking perspective, even if the data protection officer is not mandatory, I guess banks and financial institutions are well aware that the central bank would expect the compliance officer or the relevant authority in your bank to at least on a basic level check if this regulation is being implemented correctly, if this law is being implemented correctly. So technically, you will be a data protection officer whether you like it or not.
Yes. One thing I would add to Ali, which is the reporting system. In the system that we're developing, the portal, it's an online portal, there will be exhaustive load of reports. Again, managing data by individuals is impossible, and grabbing reports also and waiting and sitting all day doing nothing but monitoring the data is also impossible. And we're not into data mining, we are in data monitoring actually. So there will be many reports that will be producing, will be showcasing the motion, how things are happening, in, out, whatever, everything there. Why? Because as per the law, we have to report any breaches, we have to report cases. If we don't back up any allegation or we cannot defend it with something tangible, we may fall in red. So if an individual will say, oh, I keep receiving your emails and I opted out, we'll check the log, we check the report of that user. You didn't opt out, maybe you clicked, but your website didn't open, your connection. So this is a technical flaw that the business or the data officer cannot be blamed for it. And it is something that may happen, but at least we should have the integrity of the system. That's why at the end of the system setup, we would like to add to have one third party audit firm to ascertain the integrity that no one can attend the data. So data should not be accessible by anyone, even by the super user of the administration. No one should be able to access the data. Only the individual is the data owner. Other than that, everything will be blindly hidden behind anyone else. And if I want to send to a group or category of users, I need to communicate with them, I'll do it. But I'm not allowed to individually access and see that person's email and that person's phone number. I can see the identity, which is a serial number for that person. And this will be the ultimate system that will provide comfort and assurance for all parties. We're not only worried about the law. Law is very important and it's a supreme matter, but we have to worry about satisfying our guests, our clients, and everyone who have entrusted us on their data. So their data will be safe. Hacking is something that we cannot prevent. Even the Pentagon can be hacked, but we will do our best to protect this data.
I think, yeah, there are a lot of things which the organizations do, and I think they're in their own sort of limitations and bounds. We've got 15 questions, gentlemen, so I want to just conscious of time, so we can just run through these faster. So we've got another one, very good question, I think, on back of our poll. So who's the right team to take responsibility of PDPL legal or compliance? I think Ali has said a very good comment here. I think compliance is the answer, but I think Ali, do you want to add something?
Yeah. So look, of course, it all depends on your organization, how your organization is structured, who does what in your organization. But usually in financial institutions, it will be better for the compliance officer, given his statutory responsibilities within the CPB framework, to be the guy responsible. But of course, he's not responsible for the full aspect. Data protection is a shared responsibility. With, let's say, for an example, in banks, it is shared with the information security officer. A huge aspect is shared with him. It is shared with risk management. It is shared also with other business or units. So the officer would be, let's say, the governance figure, or the main aspect that is responsible to looking after the implementation, or the, let's say, the how thorough was the implementation, how is the controls, are they being done correctly or not. Of course, working with the other units. So to answer it again in a very short matter, I think the compliance officer, given his statutory duties, would be the best fit to handle this. Of course, bearing in mind your structure or the company's structure.
Great, thank you. We've got another question, which I think is very interesting. Hussein Nasser asked that where are we now, implementation, revision, and the future when it comes to Bahrain PDPL, and compare that with the UK European version of PDPL. So Manal, do you want to take that question up about what do you think where we are in the journey?
Now, given the nature, now I know the law has been passed a while back, but the lack of guidance that has been provided by the authority has given people just their way, their interpretation of what needs to be done and to what extent needs to be done. So I think we're still in the early stages, and with the consultation papers that have been issued, yes, they do provide a lot more clarity in certain aspects, but they're still consultation. They're not law yet. And I'm sure once it has been decided, then we'll be able to go to the next stage to be a lot more mature. Now, GDPR, it has been there for many years. It is considered to be the gold standard, and PDPL is, trying to mirror that as well, but it's also, more applicable towards Bahrain.
But I'm just overwhelmed with the number of questions we are receiving, which is a good thing. And I don't know, I think we might overrun on time. I don't mind taking all these questions, but I think if you want, we can continue for another 10 to 15 minutes, because I think we've got a lot of interest coming out with the attendees. So I think we should continue. Do you mind, panelists, if we can continue for next 15 more minutes?
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
Manal?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay, so great. So we've got another one. Perhaps Shabal, you might want to take about it. So the recent Pegasus controversy, how does that reconcile with PDPL or GDPR? What's your view on that?
At the beginning, what did you mention? I missed it.
So the Pegasus controversy, the recent events on the controversy where the data was leaked. So do you have any views on that, or any other panelist?
Well, which leak? With which company?
No, it's.
I think Arshad, I think they are referring to the security firm Pegasus, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The application that was, spying on.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's right.
so I think they are referring to this, Sharbal.
So I think
Yes.
these kind of sort of platforms, there are a lot of these, and I was just looking at the other day all the spying tools which are available in the market. There's a lot more to be done by the law. So Shabil,
Yes.
the law.
Yeah.
Please again.
Yes. Let me tell you. In Saudi Arabia, it's been like maybe 5-6 months, where there were some publication by the Ministry of Justice that it is illegal, considered illegal and unlawful, for partners to spy on each other. because there were many eruptions over there. Now, when it comes to spying, maybe we have to draw the line between personal data and spying, because personal data law is about withholding data of others that were kept with me for a certain reason, for certain period and certain purposes. Spying is absolutely different, because spying is about someone who is breaking into your privacy or breaking into whatever from your side and grabbing whether personal data or something that is not necessarily considered as personal data. In Bahrain, the personal data law is limited to the personal data furnished, but not data hacked. In spying, there is hacking. It's intrusion, and intrusion into people's lives. So I don't see much alignment between both. They are both. They are in different paths. This is my perspective for the matter.
Thank you, Shabal. Ali, for you, this is so. What's your view on obtaining data privacy software systems for banking sector? Because you are from banking sector.
So again, we would always go back to depends on the size of your organization, the number of, or let's say the amount of data that you process or that you store or you plan to process. But I think basic systems, consent management systems, or things that are required to achieve, let's say, the basic compliance should be required. For retail banks who have a lot of, let's say, data of customers that are on a weekly basis or daily basis are onboarded, I think having a software would be the better solution.
And there's another one. I think it's talking about the legal part of it. So requesting the views of the panelists. So with so many sort of contracts, agreements, with all the legalese in place, wherein data subject is hardly explained to the content or even given the time to read, with most data processors seeking consent to the processed data, how data subject can protect his rights and roles of authorities to ward off the omnibus consent. So in the law now, Vineet, there is explicit and unconditional requirement. So, when these comes to the contractual terms, you have to read the fine prints. And so I think Manal would shed some light on it also, because of the type of contracts you have to develop. You have to get into that, but you end up actually. So the law does not allow you to opt for the companies to say you are opting in, sort of opting out. You can actually opt in. But Manal, do you want to shed some light on that? That's a very good question.
It also goes back to culture, a part of it. But let's say the first step legally, you will need to have the consent in place in order to have that contract and to have that legitimate processing. So for example, if somebody comes to a Batalco shop, they get the application form, you will see those, we have added those boxes in place, got the approval also from the TRA, and say, yes, you give us the consent to have your data, and without your data, we won't be able to have that contract. It is also up to the member of staff to explain that if the customer asks, and if the customer doesn't complete it, you can't have a contract, so you won't be able to process it. If a customer questions, then it is the responsibility of the company to answer that. That is very important. And we don't really, and Sharbel touched on this earlier, and I fully agree with it. It is a cultural thing. I mean, within the Middle East, we have a different sense of culture, the way we look at data, personal data, versus in Europe. And this goes back to World War I, World War II, and how everyone is very protective of their data. And they aren't very willing to share it. Whereas here, anyone asks, you might as well walk around with your CPR hanging off you. You're just sharing it willingly. So there is that difference. But if the data subject needs to, I think it will happen over time. They will understand their rights and they will need to question, and the company is obliged to answer.
I think it's an iterative process, as you rightly said. I think having lived in the UK for good 8 years myself, I think in that journey of 8 years, I've learned a lot about my own rights when it comes to data sharing. So perhaps I think once you start this culture and changes from both from the businesses as well as the data subjects, I think there will be more of learning for both sides. And I think that's the answer. So legalese have to be there, but there needs to understand it. And data subject has to be educated also. Attending these kind of seminars is one of the ways for them to understand. So we're saying that I think that's a very good question for the data sets you have, the size of data sets all of you guys have. The issue of consent for the old customer, especially those who have left Bahrain, I think that becomes a difficult. So, when you're doing the full data inventory, it will become difficult for you to identify what kind of data to keep and what kind of data to shred. Perhaps I think you want to shed some light. Perhaps Ali, you want to talk about it, because there's a lot of customer data you hold and people might leave. So what are you doing with that data?
Yeah, well, it's a good question here. Of course, going back to the banking side, uh, you would always draft your let's say your terms of conditions or your contract in a way that gives you the right to update such while informing such customer. Of course, in the banking sector, we usually send an SMS or a letter or whatever communication way to the customer, telling him that we have changed our terms and conditions. A lot of financial institutions add the consent part in their account opening or whatever, let's say, basic terms and conditions documents that they offer to clients. So an update to those, if it reaches, let's say, all your clients, even if somebody left Bahrain, if it reaches his registered number, I would think that you have done your statutory duty there. But I don't know other sectors, of course. In the banking sector, since he has left Bahrain, his account is not active, his account is dormant, i.e., it is not moving, he cannot do any business or whatsoever. So once this client again reactivates his account using any of the approved methods by a central bank, you would immediately, let's say, give him the new terms of conditions. You would obtain the consents required so that you can do business again with him. So the aspects of, would I be able to cover all my clients, whether the clients have left Bahrain or they are in Bahrain? It would be very hard to cover all of them in one shot. You would also you would have a lot of clients that left Bahrain that have dormant accounts that don't do business with you, that will not respond to you anyway. So you have to have some kind of control to control the data of that client, to have it there, keep it in a way that it is not leaked, it is not used in a wrong manner, let's say. Furthermore, I think the new regulations would shed light more on such data which would you have. So to end this, let's say, answer, I would say that you have to properly control any data that is not being used and ensure that it is not used in a way without his consent, especially for clients that are not dealing with you again, that did not respond with you, or that have left the country.
Sorry, we have a lot of questions. So what I've suggested we do, we take one more question, and I think perhaps just allow me, if you can, I will just try to sort of give quick responses to some of these questions. So your question about the customer's perspective, we just talked about, Siraj, Din Mustafa, that the customer constant, although the centralized location of data sets would be really difficult. Ali, you might want to go to on a mute. Your voice is echoing from that side. Yeah. So there is a regulatory, there is no regulatory initiative to create the data center, but then it has to be on a case-by-case basis, depending on what kind of arrangement you have with individual companies. We've talked about penalties. There are penalties which are part of the law, Numair. The law talks about penalties of various kinds, depending on the severeness of your non-compliance. It can range from 1,000 dinar to 2,000 dinar, and repeatedly daily penalties also, and on top of it an imprisonment also if you don't comply with the requirements. So I will just pick up one more point to throw at you, and I think perhaps we'll have to wrap up all these questions in a summary document to all the participants. It's been fantastic. I've got these 12 questions open here, and then got other questions which are there on the comments box also. So we'll sum it up. All of you'll get the responses inshallah in a couple of days time. I saw one very sort of close to the hard question, which I think that might be sort of required to answer. So it's talking about the HR, saying regarding HR data, is it statutory retention period in place in Bahrain when is the next staff 2 years of the service wanted to opt out? How is he treated? So I think we've not talked about people in the organization. So how do you deal with the HR related data? So your own people's data. Shabal, do you want to say something about that?
Yes, indeed. We discussed this matter internally as well, because we've been into this journey for some time now. Internal data, HR, board, anyone who makes part of the entity itself, they cannot opt out from internal communication, because this is a channel of communication. You don't distribute a newsletter, for example, by hard copy anymore. So this is a group. This is a group of containing information and emails of individuals who are staff. Nevertheless, in the system, they can opt out from receiving promotions. They are not under obligation, but they are under obligation to receive notification about a change in policy here or announcement there. That will be always there. Same to even the board, even the shareholders, whoever would like to register to their group. So we are ending up with groups of groups by category, groups that have rights to do things, groups that don't have rights to do everything. Of course, an employee cannot opt out from an internal list.
Great.
Unless they leave the business. Unless they leave the business, yes.
Okay. But I think I'm just conscious of time. This is great, amazing that we have got so many questions. I've got so many questions unanswered. We'll spend a couple of sort of minutes more just to sum up the whole thing. I've heard a lot of things today. The culture, the law is upcoming, so there is a lot more to be seen. But fantastic work. Work seamless exercise done by the ministry itself, just trying to put it more and more information out there for people to adopt. It's just my measly 2 cents to the pot. And that's how the journey of implementation should ideally look like. Of course, in different organizations would do it differently, but then you need to understand, first of all, what's your own data protection assessment, where do you stand? You need to do your own gap assessment, do develop a framework, including the policy and procedures, take the whole inventory of the data, personal data, sensitive data you hold in an organization, what controls you have on the data sets which you're receiving. You perhaps want to change different parts of the organization, restructure, maybe create a committee or an officer. We talked about the officer appointment also, and perhaps more information to go up to the governance body of the organization, reviewing your own contracts, your TNCs, the noticing you actually share with the third parties, and how you deal with your customers, then updating those contracts, and then as Shabal and others have mentioned, specifically train your people for them to be able to educate the market about the data protection law itself. And we are there to help you. Shabal doesn't think that the consultants can add value, but I think we can.
No, sorry, no. I thought I misunderstood. No, they can add value. They have value, but of course, as you said, we see it 7 days, they see it in a week time. Yeah. Okay, so if you can do it in-house, it is good, but doesn't mean that we're not inviting people to go and do it in-house if they don't have the internal resources. Otherwise, they will end up with serious trouble. So there is liability on that decision, of course.
Definitely.
No,
and
of course, we want all firms, including your firm and all other firms,
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So we've got data protection assessment. We can help you out with changes in the contracts. There might be, depending on the size of the organization, varied amount of contracts, developing the framework, train your people. So we partner with you to work with you on this whole journey of implementation of the law. Thank you very much, guys. I'm going to, this is amazing. Overwhelming response on this event. A lot of good questions. My name is athGADLANG again, and we are doing this. PDPL is one of the first ones which we want to do. We want to talk about more different topics. Please give us your comments as to what else you want to hear out. We can do deep dive on PDPL. We can go and pick up any other topic, new regulatory requirements coming up, or any other topic you want to talk about. We'll be more than delighted. The panelists, these panelists or others, we can create a network of people to start understanding and learn from each other as we did. I thoroughly loved it because it's hardly you get the time to hear from the horse's mouth exactly what's happening inside the larger organizations as to how they're dealing with it. Of course, in this limited amount of time, we get to know the glimpse of what they've been doing, but we can ask more questions. So what we will suggest, you write all the questions, we will take the responsibility of compiling all the answers best possible way we do. We've been in touch with Ministry of Justice also. They've been very kind in responding to us also, and I'm damn sure that they will be responding to the others also when they're asking questions. So with that said, I would request the panelists to stay, and we're going to end the recording of the call. And thank you very much. Leave your comments and questions if you want. We will just continue to hold it for another couple of minutes, and then we will just do a vote of thanks to Shabal, to Manal, and to Ali. Thank you, extremely thank you for taking our time. This is a busy working day. So we will now end the conversation. Thank you, participants, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.